All right, this is Stone Age Notes, Chapter 1, Section 2, and we're going to be talking about the Old Stone Age for the most part here and into the New Stone Age. So it starts off like this. Long before humans used metal, we're talking about 3.5 million years ago. A huge explosion shook part of what is now the country of Tanzania, which is in East Africa. A volcano spit out clouds of fine ash that fell on the surrounding land. Then the rain came. It turned the blanket of ash into thick mud. Before the mud dried, two individuals walked across the landscape. As they walked, they left their footprints in the mud. So these are two scientists who are much smarter than myself. They look like female footprints. One female is a lot older than the other. The other set of footprints is a child's footprints, also female from the look. So they think that this was a mother and daughter, and it almost feels like their arms were locked and they were doing the thing where you can like walk big with both of your legs. And you can almost picture that when you're little and you lock arms with someone, could be your mom or your aunt or your dad or whoever, older cousin, and you kind of like walk at the same time, like sideways like this, and you're holding arms. So cool that 3.5 million years ago, someone did something that we do very similarly today. I just love that story. So in 1976, a group of scientists looking for evidence of early humans discovered these footprints. What luck! They were preserved in stone. They were amazed at their find. The footprints are almost identical to those made by modern humans who walk in wet sand. The Stone Age, from hunting and gathering to farming. 1 million years after these footprints were made, human ancestors began using tools. They used stones as hammers, and with these hammers, they chipped sharp flakes from soft volcanic rock. They used the points they made to cut plants or meat. And I did talk to you about this in class. I don't know if you remember. Looking at these spearheads, and some of them are arrowheads, you can kind of tell what they would be good for, right? So we said that you're looking for a smaller arrowhead or spear point if you are hunting bird, whereas you would want something bigger if you are hunting bigger game like bear. And then it is kind of a larger serrated tool that one would need, which I don't see here, but we talked about it in class, if you are going to like skin an animal. So different tools for different things, but all very important. This first use of stone to create tools began what we now call the Stone Age. The Stone Age gets its name from the fact that people made tools and weapons mainly from stone. These tools were very simple. Gradually, people began to make more and more complex tools from stone. Scientists think the Stone Age continued for hundreds of thousands of years until people learned to use other metals for tools and weapons. Like we've talked a little bit about copper. Archaeologists divide the Stone Age into three parts, although these aren't necessarily the three parts we're going to focus on. So there's an old Stone Age, a middle Stone Age, a new Stone Age. We really focus on the old Stone Age and the new Stone Age, and then the first cities, because especially towards the end of the new Stone Age, things start to develop very rapidly there. When a society gets stable, then more people want to join it. And so very quickly it becomes a city. So during the old Stone Age, people didn't yet know how to farm, or they certainly didn't want to. They lived by hunting animals and gathering roots, berries, leaves, and seeds. They used stone to make hunting weapons and tools, to cut meat, as we talked about, and to scrape out animal hides, cut skins to make clothing, and all sorts of other things. They also used other materials like bones and animal horns and tusks. Oh, do you see my cat? Lurking. I love the Mammoth Bone House. Look at that monstrosity. Gradually, Old Stone Age people learned to hunt in groups. Makes life easier. Besides, if you've ever had to like try to pull down a mastodon, it's not easy to do on your own. You kind of need some pals with you. So soon they developed the skill of cooperating in the hunt. Almost all of human prehistory took place during the Old Stone Age. We're talking hunting and gathering and cooperative hunt and bone houses, and constantly being on the move and looking for your next perfect geographic setting for you to settle momentarily to gather food. And then it says fire between about 500,000 years ago and about 1,400,000 years ago. Kind of a big span of time. There was another important development in human prehistory, the discovery of fire. So there's a good million years that we're really not sure when it was discovered. And maybe we won't ever know for sure. Maybe it hits different parts of the world at different time. But what we do know is that probably it was discovered accidentally, right? If you came across a fire, like a grass fire or a forest fire, you could probably figure out how to use that to your benefit, right? But creating fire when you need it is a whole other thing. There she goes, cat on the move. So it says, perhaps one day a small band of hunters saw a grass fire caused by lightning in an open field. Terrified by the fire, they probably ran from it. But a great advance came when humans discovered how to make fire when they wanted it, when they needed it. They probably did this by rubbing two sticks together or by striking stones together to produce a spark. With the ability to make fire if they needed it, people could move to areas that had colder climates. So it's time they can start settling in new areas. As people developed the use of tools, they left their original homes in East Africa. This may have begun as early as 1 million years ago. Many Old Stone Age people became nomads, who are people with no single settled home. We know that, right? They moved around to places where they were sure that they would find food. These nomads stayed at a campsite for several days. When they gathered all the food around, they moved on. Humans eventually spread out over much of the earth through this time period, right? Because if you're just eating the food in that location and moving on, and there are lots of groups of humans on earth doing that, it doesn't take long before they're everywhere. There's evidence that people were living in Asia and Europe at least 500,000 years ago. Perhaps 30,000 years ago, humans crossed from Asia to North America. Perhaps by 10,000 BC, humans had reached Peru and South America. So once they trickle across from Asia to North America, it doesn't take long for them to set. I mean, it's pretty cold up in like northern Canada, right? Like it was a little warmer and better. It was a little warmer and better. And before they know it, they're in South America. And then they reached really the Tierra del Fuego down there. And they covered all of North and South America. So though few in number, people lived in regions as different as the steamy rainforests in Asia, which we'll learn about later this year, the cold lands near the Arctic Circle, and the very high altitudes of the Andes Mountains in South America. So they're adapting to their regions. The beginning of farming. For tens of thousands of years, humans continued to live as hunters and gatherers. Some societies entered the Middle Stone Age, characterized by some more refined tools. So that's our characterization of the Middle Stone Age. There isn't a whole lot to tell you about that other than they had better tools. But then they got even better tools. Then, that should say, then about 11,000 years ago, people in Southwest Asia made an amazing discovery. They learned that if they planted seeds of wild grasses, new crops of grass would grow. It's true. Thus began the New Stone Age in Southwest Asia. It was called the New Stone Age because people began to grow their own food. They were no longer nomads. So once they're growing their own food, they're not just going to wander away from it, right? They're going to stay where the food is. It was like the opposite lifestyle of a nomad. Really, the two lifestyles are so different. when you are living in the old Stone Age and you're a hunter gatherer and you're a nomad, your whole day is wrapped up in finding the food. In the new Stone Age, it's growing the food, which is arguably more work, but you have a more dependable food supply unless something happens to it. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. So they were no longer nomads, although they still depended on stone tools. However, in many other parts of the world, the Old Stone Age and Middle Stone Ages continue for thousands of years in some areas. In fact, some Old Stone Age societies still existed into the 1900s, like 100 years ago. Since in most societies, women were responsible for gathering plants and seeds, they probably were the first ones to discover planting seeds. Men usually were the hunters or fishers. Women began planting and harvesting their crops in the same place year after year. Thus, farming. So you have a picture here that just kind of shows you where some farming first develops throughout the world. So in Mesoamerica, they're first farming maize and beans, and then in the Andes, beans and potatoes. In West Africa, I see yams. Love yams. And then over towards Egypt, you see wheat and barley. In Mesopotamia here, there's all sorts of good things going on. Wheat and barley and beans and yeah, that's about it. And then in India, all of that plus rice. In China, millet and soybeans. And then also the wheat and the barley comes over. You see things are just spreading very fast. And then in Southeast Asia, bananas, rice, yams. There's breadfruit here. Bananas, rice, yams are coming over from Southeast Asia to Africa. So a lot of new farming foods, but also they're spreading. They don't stay in one place. So that's pretty cool too. Farming in other places. Some places were better for farming than others. Soil in some areas was very fertile soil, which means that the soil contains substances that plants need to grow. Plants also need light and warmth. So areas that had long springs and summers were good places to farm. Gentle rains were important sources of water for plants. In several places around the world, many miles apart, people discovered that the soil, the water, and the length of the summers was good for plants. These people took up the farming way of life for the most part. About 7,000 years ago, Chinese farmers began planting rice and other crops like millet. A little later in Central America, people began growing corn and beans and squash and potatoes. These are all things I love to eat. Well, the kinds of plants grown by those first farmers is still foods we eat today, right? Still important today. They look so different. When people first began planting seeds, they carefully chose the biggest, best tasting plants. So if you had a crop of carrots and you were going to gather seeds for the next crop of carrots, you were gathering those seeds from the plant that had the biggest, best tasting carrots. And through time of that process, going over and over again, you're going to end up with larger, better carrots, right? So that's kind of what happens throughout time. It says they selected those seeds to plant, and gradually this careful selection of the biggest and best seeds and roots from each crop led to the kind of food that we eat today. For example, the earliest corn came from cobs only 2 or 3 inches long. Today, the corn on the cobs that we eat are 4 times that. Not all human groups took up farming. Like I said, it is a lot more work, and it's a completely different lifestyle. Even today, a few groups still live the way that we believe old Stone Age people lived. Such groups include some living in the rainforests of the Amazon River Valley and in South America. Also in the Kalahari Desert of Africa and in parts of New Guinea, a Pacific Ocean island. All right, so the other half of farming, right? So if the old Stone Age friends were hunting and gathering, then they were eating fruits and vegetables and whatnot, but also meat. So the farming way of life, right? Now you're planting your crops, that's great, but how are you going to get your meat? Well, by taming animals. Humans learned another important skill during the New Stone Age. Since they're not on the move anymore, they got to figure out how they can keep their meat on their farm. They learned to domesticate or tame, it's your definition, tame animals. The first domesticated animals may have been dogs because they were valuable in hunting. By taming sheep, cows, and pigs, people developed a ready source of meat and milk and wool and skins through careful breeding, just like with those seeds we were just talking about. So, by having the best animals make the best babies, the herders developed animals that were gentler than their wild ancestors and gave more milk or wool. By about 3000 BC, cattle, camels, horses, and donkeys were trained to carry heavy loads. What do you think the very first tamed animal was? Domesticated animal. A lot of people that say it's the dog, right? Because dogs just tend to gravitate towards people, but cats are great too. I have to say that because she's right there. All right, it is time to take notes. That should be good for today.